decided he was going to become a pirate. Sell the country, take Prince Michael hostage,
guns, petrol bombs, projectiles, and Molotov cocktails,
capture the island,
an international money laundering ring.
A battalion of Dutch mercenaries.
They had already blown up one such fort,
assembled a ragtag army of fishermen, and embarked on a helicopter raid by night
to assist their drug trafficking operations.
Transform the entire country into a casino. Right, this just might be the most insane story I've ever read. It's the absolutely real history of a not-so-real country, and it's got just about everything you could want in a nation's founding. A battle with the British Navy,
an international crime ring,
an evil diamond merchant,
a hostage crisis,
some assassinations,
flamethrowers,
an offshore casino,
petrol bombs,
and a helicopter assault by night, all fighting over a stretch of land smaller than a baseball diamond. Sounds like the plot of a James Bond film, doesn't it? Well then I suppose it's handy they had his stuntman piloting the chopper. We are Compass Mentis, and this is the absolutely mental history of Sealand. No, I swear, I'm not making this up. Get used to that, we'll probably be saying it a lot. The Principality of Sealand is a micronation. A sort of country that's not really a country, but does a pretty good job of pretending it is one. Like Ironland, the Space Kingdom of Asgardia, or France. They might print off their own passports, have a flag, a national anthem, maybe a currency, as well as a few dedicated residents that work together to mimic how a real country operates. Of the Micronations Club, Sealand is probably the biggest. Not literally, though. In reality, it's roughly the size of a naval fort, because it is a naval fort. HM Fort Ruffs, an offshore platform 11 kilometres from Suffolk in the UK that had been built in World War II to defend the Thames and provide anti-aircraft support. But the fort's new life as a nation wouldn't begin until 1967, all thanks to this man, Prince Paddy Roy Bates of Sealand. He began his long career of imaginatively spiting the UK government in 1965, when the former army major decided he was going to become a pirate. Well, a pirate radio broadcaster, but don't be mistaken, that doesn't mean it was any less violent. The BBC had pretty tight laws around who could and couldn't broadcast in the UK during the 1960s, the key word being in the UK. And as you'll see later, Bates was very fond of a loophole. So, he became one of the many people going offshore to the international waters on boats or on disused buildings at sea in order to get around these restrictions. The big three of the era was Radio Caroline, broadcast from a boat of the same name, Radio City, operating out of Fort Knock John, and Radio Essex, operating out of Fort Knock John.
Well, I'm sure they can handle this like adults.
One hostile takeover later, Bates and his army of feral DJs, as one source excellently puts it, had obtained everything they needed to get Radio Essex up and running. The only problem was that Knock John was too close to Britain's territorial waters, so he and the head of Radio Caroline, a man named Ronan O'Rahilly, decided to move to Fort Ruffs, which had been abandoned in 1956. O'Rahilly wanted to turn the offshore platform into a health farm, a sort of residential club where celebrities could go for exercise or dieting. But Bates didn't share his vision, and quickly booted him from the island. But in 1967, O'Rahilly and the crew of the Caroline returned, intending to take Fort Ruffs by force. But this wasn't Bates' first rodeo, and he fought back hard with guns, improvised petrol bombs, and, according to some, an improvised flamethrower.
It was about then that the UK government got involved. If they weren't already angry about the whole flamethrower-wielding maniac taking over one of their naval forts, they were probably pushed over the edge when they heard that Bates had renamed his pirate radio station Britain's Better Music Station, out of pure spite. The BBC takes no prisoners. So, the Marine Broadcasting Offences Act came into effect. It didn't do anything about the whole petrol bombing thing, but it did clamp down on British citizens being employed by pirate radios. Keyword being British citizens.
Bates really did like his loopholes.
So, on the 2nd of September 1967, Paddy Roy Bates declared himself not a citizen of Britain, but the Crown Prince of his very own nation, the Principality of Sealand. The date was also a special occasion, since it was wife Joan's birthday, and for her present she became a princess, gifted her very own kingdom, even if it was only 0.004 square kilometres in size. Radio Essex wouldn't be broadcast again from Fort Ruffs, because Prince Roy, as he was then known, had formulated a new business venture. Looking at the fort, it might seem unimpressive, being roughly the size of 2 tennis courts, but the towers are 7 stories tall, and inside they have everything from a first-class suite, a cathedral, and even a prison that, as we'll get to shortly, did actually see some use. Over the next few years, Sealand would gain every hallmark of a nation. They got a flag, issued stamps, created passports, penned an official constitution, composed a national anthem, and even got their own currency, the Sealand dollar. And whilst you'd struggle to find any shop that accepts them, their purported conversion rate is about $20 to 1 Sealand. So, invest now, I guess. But it wasn't all smooth sailing for Bates, his Princess Joan, or children, Penny and Michael, because in 1968 the British Navy decided it was time to send Sealand back to the deep. They had already blown up one such fort as a warning to the royals, but it appears the Navy underestimated how absolutely mental this family was. They had already fought off 7 armed invasions at this point, so when a British vessel strayed too close to Sealand, the Bates opened fire with an arsenal of guns, petrol bombs, projectiles, and Molotov cocktails. Sadly, no word on the flamethrower though. This was actually effective, with the Navy backing down, realising just what kind of chaos they were up against. It didn't stop Michael and Roy being arrested, though, since they had been firing at government workers. But when it came time for the trial, the case against the Bates was thrown out because it had been in international waters. Loopholes for the win.
But this was far from the last of Sealand's battles. Having sufficiently proven they ruled the waves, Prince Roy began eyeing up other potential businesses. Such plans included, at various times, becoming a casino, a tax haven, a data centre, or even the base of operations from the website The Pirate Bay. They also continue to offer up various purchasable trinkets and titles should you want to feel important, including Baron, Baroness, Duke, Duchess, Dame, Sir, Lady and Lord. Among their more notable nobles included Terry Wogan, the national treasure, and Ed Sheeran, the national... But of their various business ventures, one stands out as especially noteworthy. Enter Alexander Achenbach, a German diamond merchant who was one of Sealand's 100 or so followers back in 1978. He'd made numerous attempts to help get the Principality recognised, such as sending their constitution repeatedly to the UN. Strangely, I don't think he ever heard back from them. Achenbach wanted Sealand to expand and proposed building apartments, parks and casinos on the island, as well as imposing taxes on its 30-ish residents. He even began calling himself Prime Minister, and tensions between him and Prince Roy began to rise. This all came to a head when the royal couple were away from home on a business trip, which Achenbach claims was a ploy to sell the country. So, he did the reasonable thing and called in a battalion of Dutch mercenaries to capture the island, take Prince Michael hostage, and to transform the entire country into a casino. You can't make this up. Somehow, the situation escalated even further, since Achenbach's men had made the exact same mistake as the British Navy. They assumed Paddy Roy Bates wasn't the toughest, craziest man you could possibly imagine. Within 3 days, he'd assembled a ragtag army of fishermen and embarked on a helicopter raid by night, breaching Sealand's defences with the aid of John Crewdson, the stuntman of some James Bond films like Goldfinger, who was supposedly the one piloting the helicopter. In a matter of hours, Prince Roy had saved his son and his people, fought off the mercenaries, and captured them all in Sealand's very own prison. Whilst many were released quite quickly, the German government actually had to send a diplomat out to Sealand in order to negotiate one man's release, being arguably the closest the nation ever came to proper recognition. At least for a moment, Prince Roy was seen as a diplomatic equal. Well, it was either that, or Germany was terrified of the nutcase with a flamethrower, just in case he ever decided to start expanding his territory inland.
Since then things have calmed down in Sealand, comparatively at least. Arkenbeck's rebel government would pop up again in 1997 when it was revealed they were somehow involved in an international money laundering ring, using the official Sealandian passports issued by the Bates to assist their drug trafficking operations, because apparently this story hadn't hit enough action movie tropes quite yet. There were links across Hong Kong, Iraq, Germany and Russia, and one such passport even showed up during the police investigation of the murder of Gianni Versace, the Italian fashion designer.
In the last few years, we've also seen Prince Michael take the throne of Sealand, with the nation's founder, Roy Bates, passing away in 2012, followed by his beloved Princess Joan in 2016. But their legacy continues to thrive. Sealand is still going strong, with both a football team and American football team to their name, the Sealand Seahawks, and even a national representative at the World Cup of Kung Fu. Because if there's one thing that has been made very clear, the people of Sealand are fighters. From holding the fort to taking on the navy with Molotov cocktails, Sealand has proven that whilst micronations still aren't really taken seriously, you should never underestimate what people can do with a radio and a dream. And a flamethrower.
So, as they say in Sealand, e mare libertas, from the sea, freedom. Thank you for watching.
Somewhere beyond the sea, somewhere beyond the UK's territory, the prince can stand upon Sealand and watch as the ships go flaming somewhere where we could be free to be at war with the British Navy. The BBC wept, where's that flamethrower kept? Could you please show me? Somewhere beyond the sea.